Imagine a world cloaked in mist, the air thick with smoke, not from the hearth, but from something far more curious. The year is 1347. Europe is a patchwork of walled towns, roaming knights, and peasant folk who whisper secrets to the wind. Among them, a curious herb makes its way into lives both sacred and profane. Its name? Cannabis. Known to some as hemp, it was more than rope and sails. It was a ticket to a different kind of cloud. In monasteries, monks would grind it into oils, creating potions for sleep, for pain, and, let's be honest, sometimes for fun. Picture Brother Aldrich, cloaked in brown robes, discreetly passing around a small pouch. One whiff, and suddenly, the psalms sound jazzier. Villagers, too, discovered the herb's secret pleasures. At the tavern, a pipe was more potent than any mead. What madness is this, you might ask? Madness, indeed, but the kind that makes you giggle while the plague knocks at your door. Hemp wasn't just for laughter. Wounds were wrapped in its leaves. Fevers soothed with its oils. And yet, somewhere in the shadows, someone was rolling joints, centuries before the term existed. The elite sometimes enjoyed private gardens, growing the plants tall as a man's shoulder. Smoke curling from stone chimneys, carrying secrets to the night sky. Legend tells of Lady Elswith, who smoked a leaf before battle prayers, claiming visions of victory, or maybe she just had the munchies. Humor was everywhere, hidden beneath the grime of medieval life. "Hath thou tried the leaf?" one peasant might ask, smirking as another coughs out laughter. And yet, cannabis lived in paradox. Medicine and mischief intertwined, sacred and profane, revered and scorned. Traveling alchemists would trade seeds and tinctures, whispering promises of bliss or delirium, depending on the dosage. One could argue that cannabis was the original nightlife of the Middle Ages, quietly threading through feasts, fairs, and whispered secrets behind castle walls. The church, of course, had opinions. Some saw it as a natural gift, others, a devil's distraction. And so, it danced on the edge of tolerance, like smoke curling from a candle. By night, in small hamlets, folk would gather in secret circles. Jesters, minstrels, and even the occasional monk would partake, passing the leaf, sharing stories, and laughing until dawn. There's an odd comfort in knowing that, even in times of plague and war, humans sought joy, laughter, and a little lift to escape the weight of their world. Cannabis, in medieval times, was the silent rebel, a plant both humble and powerful, weaving itself into history without a trumpet fanfare. And so, as the moon rises over cobblestone streets, imagine the faint, aromatic smoke rising alongside prayers, curses, and laughter, a whisper of humanity reaching for something higher. As dawn broke over the misty hills, the smell of baked bread mixed oddly with faint hints of the green herb, carried from last night's revelries. Farmers trudged to the fields, still laughing at the jokes told under the moon, or the visions they claimed to have had after a secret puff. Hemp stalks swayed in the breeze, a humble crop, yet secretly a ticket to the skies. Apothecaries kept jars of cannabis in their shadowed shops, tucked between vials of powdered roots and potions of dubious efficacy. A sprig of this herb could calm a crying child, heal a fever, or, if you were bold enough, send the town council into fits of giggles during tedious debates. In some corners of Europe, sailors carried hemp seeds across seas, not just for ropes, but for a cheeky puff after long voyages. There's a story of a ship captain, weary from storms, who claimed that smoking hemp kept morale afloat. His crew, for once, didn't mutiny, they laughed too hard to row. Nobles, of course, loved dramatics. A duke might host a gathering, invite his closest friends, and subtly pass around the leaf while reciting poetry. "Hast thou ever pondered the stars while elevated?" one might whisper, trying to sound profound, but failing spectacularly, because laughter always won. Meanwhile, peasants outside the castle walls chuckled at their own simpler rituals, rolling leaves into small pipes, sharing them by the hearth, and inventing names that would make the monks blush. Humor in medieval life was rare, life was harsh, taxes were cruel, and disease was a constant companion, but cannabis offered a fleeting rebellion, a wink at the absurdity of existence. Medicine and recreation often blurred. A tincture for pain could quickly become a social lubricant, with neighbors comparing effects and stories of visions or fits of giggles. Witchcraft whispers were never far behind. Some claimed witches used the herb for spells, seeing visions in its smoke. Others argued it was simply clever marketing. A little smoke, a little fear, and you've got obedience. Herbalists, traveling from village to village, carried both medicine and gossip, telling tales of enchanted forests, talking animals, and leaves that could make a man laugh until he cried. There were darker tales, of course. Some claimed that too much of the herb could open doors better left closed, hallucinations, strange dreams, and encounters with spirits of the woods. Yet, most simply used it to escape, to share a laugh, to remember that even in the shadow of death and disease, joy could still be stolen from the world. A minor nobleman, caught mid-puff, once argued before the town council that hemp was a gift from God, a herb of enlightenment, if not outright salvation. The council disagreed, but secretly tried it later. Storytelling and laughter became inseparable from cannabis use. Minstrels performed with brighter eyes, jesters grew cleverer, and monks, against all expectations, occasionally added a note of merriment to their chants. Festivals, too, were a playground for experimentation. Leaves and oils, hidden in pastries or infused in ale, led to accidental revelries that would be whispered about for years. The humor was subtle, often absurd, sometimes shocking. One village tale tells of a man convinced he was a chicken after a night's indulgence, strutting through the market square until he collapsed in giggles. And still, authorities oscillated between tolerance and suspicion. Too many laughs could be dangerous, too much medicine could be misunderstood. Yet the people persisted. The herb had a rhythm to it, a pulse that connected the cobblestone streets, the darkened forests, and the flickering candlelight of small cottages. By nightfall, families huddled by the fire, quietly partaking, weaving humor, medicine, and a hint of rebellion into the fabric of their lives. Cannabis became a silent witness to human resilience, a small green thread running through the tapestry of medieval life, unnoticed by most, cherished by few. Even in the most solemn of monasteries, the faint aroma could be detected, a whisper of humanity reaching for something lighter, something joyful, something higher. Night deepened over the medieval village, shadows long and flickering from torches that lined the cobblestone streets. Somewhere, a lone traveler paused, inhaling the scent of hemp from a passing window, smiling at the subtle rebellion it represented. The traveler, perhaps a wandering bard, knew that laughter and music were enhanced by the herb, turning simple tales into unforgettable epics. In quiet cottages, mothers mixed hemp oil with honey, soothing fevers and soothing tempers, unaware of the chuckles that would later erupt at supper. One cannot underestimate the audacity of a peasant laughing at misfortune while secretly elevated by a leaf carefully rolled into a crude pipe. Scholars in dusty libraries experimented as well, adding extracts to ink, claiming it sharpened their minds, or at least their sense of humor. And so, knowledge and folly became intertwined, the smell of old parchment mixing with the scent of something far greener. At fairs, vendors whispered of magical leaves, promising visions, laughter, and occasionally a sudden nap, depending on the strength of the batch. Children, of course, were kept away, though curious eyes peeked from doorways, wondering what had the adults laughing so freely. Tavern stories spread faster than wildfire. One man swore he saw a knight dancing with a ghost after a night's indulgence. Another insisted the ale tasted better when smoked first. Humor became the secret language of those who partook. A wink here, a cough there, a story exaggerated to impossible proportions. And yet, amidst all the laughter, there were rules. Too much indulgence could lead to ridicule, or worse, an unfortunate tumble into the town's well. Alchemists took notice, carefully studying the plant, noting its effects on mind and body, occasionally adding it to salves, sometimes with unintended side effects. Imagine an apprentice accidentally giving the mayor a tincture that made him sing at council meetings. Chaos ensued, but the village never laughed harder. The plant's mystique deepened. Was it a herb of healing, a tool of humor, or a whisper of witchcraft? All answers depended on perspective, and perhaps on one too many puffs. Some monks argued it opened the mind to divine visions, though others warned it was folly, a distraction from God's work. Secretly, though, even the strictest of abbeys had their nights of laughter, the faint aroma of leaves curling around candlelight as chants became unexpectedly musical. The countryside was a theater of hidden indulgence, farmers, soldiers, nobles, and traveling merchants sharing the leaf in pockets, pouches, and hidden jars. Tales grew taller with every retelling. A man claiming he could speak to animals after smoking would later insist the cows had answered him, with laughter, of course. Festivals became prime opportunities. Hidden behind tents and hay bales, folk smoked discreetly, their laughter mixing with music and the scent of roasted meats. Humor and the herb were inseparable, it was impossible to talk about one without the other. A joke told under the influence had a way of echoing through time, leaving memories hazy but joyful. Even knights, bound by code and honor, found moments of escape. A leaf before a tournament might calm nerves or simply make the lances feel funnier than dangerous. Lady Elswith returned in another tale, laughing that a joint, or whatever it might have been called, was more effective than any courtly intrigue. Throughout villages and castles alike, a subtle rebellion persisted. One puff at a time, one laugh at a time, humanity asserting itself against the weight of duty and despair. The night deepened, stars blinking over the rooftops, the faint smoke carrying secrets of those who dared to find joy in a harsh world. Cannabis, humble yet mighty, threaded itself through lives, binding humor, medicine, and mystery into a tapestry of medieval existence. And as the fire died low in cottages and halls, one could almost hear the faint echo of laughter carried on the wind, a whisper of humanity, irreverent and alive. The moon hung low over the village, pale as a monk's habit, casting shadows that danced like the jesters of old. Within cottages and taverns, the faint green smoke curled, whispering tales of mischief, medicine, and moments of unexpected hilarity. One could say medieval life was bleak, but then, one would never have witnessed a baker trying to juggle loaves while giggling under the influence of hemp. Stories like these traveled faster than plague rumors, carried from village to village by travelers, merchants, and those with a penchant for exaggeration. In some regions, cannabis was used in ritualistic ceremonies, not just for healing, but for visions of the divine, or visions of something delightfully absurd. A priest might inhale a hint of smoke before sermon, claiming enlightenment, while secretly chuckling at his own imagination. The plant became a quiet bridge between worlds, the sacred and the profane, medicine and mischief, devotion and delight. In the forests, herbalists and wandering witches experimented with leaves and tinctures, their laughter mixing with the rustling of trees and the distant howl of wolves. Legends grew. A young shepherd claiming he had conversations with his sheep after a night's indulgence, a knight swearing his sword spoke to him in rhyme. Festivals offered another stage. Amidst music, firelight, and feasting, leaves and oils were passed discreetly, elevating minds and blurring the line between reality and revelry. Humor, always present, became sharper under the influence. Jokes that would normally fall flat became masterpieces of timing and absurdity. One tavern tale tells of a man who attempted to recite poetry after smoking hemp. Halfway through, he began to freestyle an epic about chickens and dragons. Villagers laughed until dawn, the lines between heroism and hilarity perfectly blurred. Meanwhile, scholars debated in secret libraries. Was the herb a gift from nature, a tool of divine inspiration, or merely a convenient excuse to giggle during tedious lectures? Apothecaries carefully documented effects: a drop of oil for pain, a leaf for laughter, a tincture for fever, and perhaps, unintentionally, a recipe for absurdity. Monks, contrary to expectations, sometimes partook as well, claiming it enhanced meditation, though tales of hallucinating abbots chasing invisible angels suggest otherwise. Humor and humanity intertwined. A laugh shared across a table, a mispronounced spell, a night dancing with a shadow. It was all part of the secret tapestry woven by cannabis. And in markets, merchants traded not just goods, but whispers. A leaf here, a tincture there, rumors of visions that made evenings far brighter. Soldiers, weary from skirmishes and long marches, discovered it as well. One puff before battle, and suddenly the enemy looked slightly more ridiculous. Lady Elswith returned in local lore, now a symbol of both cunning and mirth, claiming the herb helped her navigate court intrigues with laughter as her weapon. Tales persisted, exaggerated over time, of kings snickering behind tapestries, of jesters performing feats far too absurd to be real, fueled by the quiet rebellion of hemp. And yet, it was never just about entertainment. The herb healed, soothed, and comforted, offering a small rebellion against the harshness of medieval existence. From village to castle, from monastery to forest, the herb left its mark, subtle, fragrant, and eternally mischievous. Even in the darkest times, laughter persisted, carried on the smoke curling through windows, chimneys, and hearts. Cannabis, humble yet audacious, threaded through lives like an invisible minstrel, singing of human folly, resilience, and fleeting joy. By the hour of midnight, as the village slept, the faint aroma lingered, a whisper of mischief and medicine, of laughter and legend. One could imagine, somewhere in the shadows, a peasant, a monk, a soldier, sharing a leaf, laughing quietly, daring to find joy when the world demanded sorrow. And so, the herb lived on, not just as plant, but as idea, as rebellion, as tiny green spark lighting the darkness of medieval nights. Dawn's first light crept over the village, spilling silver across rooftops and fields, yet in some cottages, the echoes of last night's laughter still lingered. Farmers rubbed their eyes, trying to remember whether that was a cow speaking in rhyme or simply the effects of a well-timed puff. Tales of hemp's subtle magic had spread far and wide, from monastery kitchens to crowded taverns, from castle chambers to quiet woodland hideaways. Some claimed the herb sharpened the mind, others said it dulled it just enough to appreciate the absurdity of life. And absurdity was everywhere. Consider a blacksmith, trying to forge horseshoes, laughing so hard at imagined dragons that his hammer slipped, and miraculously, the horseshoes were perfect. Apothecaries continued their experiments. One monk noted that a tincture eased headaches, while another swore it made sermons more entertaining for both preacher and congregation. Villagers, of course, found inventive ways to incorporate hemp into daily life. Leaves in stews, oils in pastries, even clandestine smoke breaks during tedious council meetings. Humor became its own currency. A well-timed joke under the influence of hemp could earn respect, or at least a hearty laugh that echoed through the tavern. Soldiers returning from battle shared tales that mixed valor with folly, often exaggerating the effects of hemp. A foot soldier claiming he bested an army of goblins after a puff, for example. Festivals remained the apex of indulgence. Between music, dance, and feasting, the herb quietly performed its magic, laughter, levity, and occasionally, philosophical insight in the least expected minds. In secret corners of castles, courtiers experimented with the plant, hiding jars beneath tapestries, daring to glimpse joy while maintaining their carefully constructed facades. Lady Elswith became more legend than mortal, a noblewoman navigating intrigue with a laugh tucked in her pocket, a small leaf her clandestine ally. Tales of minor mishaps turned heroic. One servant, after a night's indulgence, accidentally rearranged the Duke's entire collection of tapestries, but the Duke laughed, claiming it was modern art. Herbalists, wandering across kingdoms, traded leaves and tinctures for coins and stories, each plant carrying whispers of healing and humor. Occasionally, darker stories emerge. Visions of spirits, hallucinations of impossible beasts, and the occasional fainting at the wrong moment, but such tales only added to the mystique. Scholars debated endlessly. Was hemp divine, medicinal, recreational, or mischievous? Consensus was rare, but laughter was guaranteed in any discussion. Even in the austere cloisters of monks, the faint aroma sometimes appeared. A candle flickered, a leaf smoldered, and suddenly the chants sounded oddly cheerful. Traveling performers and jesters often became accidental historians of hemp, chronicling its effect on humans through tales, songs, and subtle mischief. Markets saw the most vibrant displays. A merchant might sell spices alongside leaves, weaving stories that promised visions, humor, or simply a brief escape from daily toil. In villages, the herbs served as glue for communities. Shared laughter forged bonds stronger than stone walls or church decrees. Soldiers, monks, nobles, and peasants, though separated by class, found common ground in the herbs' gentle mischief. Humor, medicine, and subtle rebellion intertwined, creating a social tapestry hidden from those who refused to look beyond duty and despair. One could even argue that cannabis was the unsung philosopher of the Middle Ages, teaching lessons in humility, joy, and absurdity without uttering a single word. And so, as sunlight painted the rooftops gold, the faint green trails remained, a reminder that even in hardship, humanity sought laughter, connection, and a touch of the extraordinary. Cannabis, humble and daring, wove its quiet magic, leaving behind whispers of joy, subtle rebellion, and a faint grin on the faces of those brave enough to partake. As night fell once more, the village settled under a canopy of stars, their faint twinkle reflecting the subtle mischief left behind by the day's indulgences. The aroma of hemp lingered in cottages, castles, and taverns alike, a silent witness to laughter, medicine, and the small rebellions that had threaded through the lives of countless souls. From peasants to monks, nobles to wandering minstrels, all had partaken in this quiet joy, leaving tales that would ripple through time, whispered by storytellers and chroniclers alike. Humor had survived plague, famine, and war, not despite it, but because of it, often tucked into a puff of smoke or a carefully rolled leaf. Even Lady Ellsworth's legendary wit and minor mishaps reminded everyone that the heart of humanity lies in laughter, in absurdity, and in fleeting moments of joy. So next time you walk through a medieval village, real or imagined, remember the quiet rebels, the secret laughter, and the humble green threads that bound communities together. Cannabis in the Middle Ages was more than plant, it was laughter, medicine, rebellion, and storytelling all rolled into one. And though centuries have passed, the echoes remain. The giggles, the visions, the subtle mischief of those who dared to find joy in a harsh world. As we leave these cobblestone streets, these flickering torches, and these whispers of green behind, take a moment to appreciate the absurdity, the history, and the humor of life. If you enjoyed wandering these medieval streets, laughing with peasants and monks alike, and discovering the hidden tales of humanity, consider subscribing. There are more stories, more laughter, and more mischief waiting in the shadows, perfect for nights when the world feels too serious. Hit subscribe and join us for the next journey into history, legend, and the forgotten corners of human folly. Until next time, keep a keen eye, a curious mind, and perhaps, just perhaps, a sense of humor worthy of Lady Ellsworth herself. Thank you for wandering the past with me, and remember, history isn't always grim. Sometimes, it's green, giggling, and utterly unforgettable.